Welcome to EpiSTEM podcast. This EpiSTEM podcast is brought to you from the National Centre of STEM Education at the School of Education in the University of Limerick. I'm your host, Geraldine Simmie, and I'm the Professor of STEM Education here at the Centre and the Director of EpiSTEM. And my co-host,
Michelle Starr, and I am the Research Liaison Officer in EpiSTEM.
Welcome back everyone to the podcast, and today our very special guest is Associate Professor Diarmad Lane. Diarmad, you're very welcome to be with us today.
Thanks so much.
Welcome, Diarmad. It's great to see you.
Yeah, Diarmad is Associate Professor here in the School of Education. He's a Senior Lecturer in Technology Education in the School of Education, and he publishes on design thinking, very interested, I suppose, in spatial intelligence, models, all of that area. Very interesting, very strong design thinking, I suppose, with our engineering and technology students. And we have a good number, I suppose, 100. They come into the hundreds here in the University of Limerick. So do you want to tell us a little bit about maybe how you got into being interested in teacher education or teaching or anything?
Sure. Thanks so much, Geraldine. So yeah, I suppose my story is I never wanted to be a teacher. I remember I was in third class in primary school one day, and I came home very upset to my mother, and I was just really angry that my teacher at the time, Mrs. O'Connell, said to me in front of everybody that I think you'd be a very good teacher, Diarmad, in a Gaeilge section of our morning. And I said to my mother that I never want to be a teacher, and that all I wanted to do was work with my hands. So that's what I did. After my leaving certificate, all I wanted to do was an apprenticeship, and I did an apprenticeship as a metal fabricator. Would love to have been an electrician, by the way, but unfortunately, I've red-green colour blindness, and
yes,
yeah, so I never got to pursue that route.
Yes,
but everything works out, and my intention was, when I started my apprenticeship, I wanted to be an engineer, and I wanted to be the best mechanical engineer in the world. And people would have spoken to me about the Germans and their model of apprenticeship education and progression into university to become engineers. And at the time, I was practicing karate. I practiced karate, martial arts, for a number of years, and I fell into instruction, and I found myself helping people and liking helping people, and even during my apprenticeship I found myself helping my classmates.
So did the teacher's voice come into your head?
Absolutely. And so it was, I suppose, with a bit of maturity and life experiences that I realised that
this is here.
I wanted to be a teaching.
It's in there.
Teacher.
It's inside there, and you've got to let it out.
Absolutely. And I never really thought about. So I'm an engineering and graphics teacher, and I never really kind of dwell too much on the discipline, and it was just I wanted to be a teacher, and I felt it was a natural progression to go from metal fabrication into engineering and graphics
so
teaching.
That helping and that educating people and all that being important. And it's really interesting that you're talking about apprenticeships, because I've been just reading recently some really good on the European project I'm working on. I've been looking at the apprenticeships, particularly in France. They give a very good general education because the French value that, and of course the Notre Dame Cathedral and all the stuff they've done, like, it's been so good. They've brought the wood and the technology and the art and ethics and everything together. So it's a fabulously interesting area, design thinking and everything that you're involved in.
It certainly is.
And even graphics and all of that.
And graphics, and even one of PhD students I'm co-supervising is looking at apprenticeships in Ireland and the apprenticeship model. And it is very interesting when you delve into it and you look at skill formation systems, which is like what a lot of literature looks at, and the interests of government and industry in terms of shaping how apprenticeships are valued.
Yes.
You kind of, so if you look at the likes of Germany, where you have high level of interest from industrial stakeholders and government.
Yes.
Whereas that may not necessarily be the case in Ireland.
No.
So different models, and so we have a lot to learn. But
we have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of history there, and culture and everything, and valuing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think I'm veering very much towards that more holistic that says, you know, head, hands, heart together, being a holistic model rather than what was traditionally seen as just either you were educated into the headspace or into the hands, and then neither seemed to be connected.
I agree.
I think there's a lot of historical context there, isn't there? Because we did, number one, put in on one side, have a great apprenticeship. I mean, I remember, because I went, education in the 70s and early 80s, I suppose, third level. But apprenticeships were a big thing where a cohort of fellow students would leave after intercert, which was called then, and do their apprenticeship. And of course, then we got very big in ourselves, just thinking of, there was always a thing where the VEC, the vocational, and then the academic, there was a, looking down on the, one vocational. And I think that historic context then, we dropped the whole apprenticeship, which is so sad, and went into the whole academic, trying to bring everyone through and now they're talking about bringing it back. But as you said, they kept it, and why they didn't see the value like they're doing in Germany and France. And I mean, you went through as your apprenticeship, and then you came into education. How did you do that transition?
Well, I suppose I suppose my family background, the influence of my parents was huge. So actually, when I was a first year apprenticeship, or when I was a first year apprentice, just out of my leaving cert, my father insisted that I engage in extra study. He straight away, and he came from he was a junior. He was a trade background himself. He would have done the group cert in a vocational school and finished schooling after that. Yeah. But he just drilled into me the importance of furthering yourself. So he enrolled himself and myself on an AutoCAD training course in Limerick back in 2000. And he put himself under massive pressure to come along with me, to support me in learning about AutoCAD. And I progressed from that, and my father, I'd say he lost a couple of years out of his life because he was just so lost, but he got through it. We got through it together, huge influence. And then I started studying with the Open University in the UK, taking modules during my apprenticeship when nobody else was doing that, with a view to becoming an engineer. So I studied maths for a couple of years, I studied science for a year, so that learning and, I suppose, desire to keep progressing myself resulted in me transitioning then to third level. So it was always my intention once I started my apprenticeship to go into third level, but alas, I pivoted into teacher education.
Wonderful. But I think that non-linear route is a very valuable asset for you now when you're working with young people and you're involved in initial teacher education. You're the course director for our professional masters in education, and with all those students, I think it's you bring a real richness in there, because I suppose the mistakes of the past were we didn't have all the joined up thinking between those routes. Those routes were seen as parallel routes, and they stratified people off into different silos, and I suppose a bit of enlightenment now is needed to make sure that new routes are always progressively done, that people can step in and step off pathways.
And I've seen it even when I go out to secondary schools as part of the outreach and talk to students who are interested in kind of deciding what they'll do for their career. And when I tell them about my story, a lot of them say, "Oh, geez, I might consider an apprenticeship myself." But I'm still even though I'm in an apprenticeship background, I don't see the technology subjects in secondary school as a route for apprenticeship, as they were previously back in the vocational education days, that it was almost a pathway for people to progress onto apprenticeships. I see technology subjects as a very kind of a more general holistic education, and not just to prepare people
we
for
would
trades.
keep it
which is very important.
Absolutely.
Very much. Moving on to your research, we just want to talk to you about a number of papers. I see you have a lovely interesting paper here with Stephen Giffney, and was he a master's student of yours?
He was a master's student on the taught Professional Master of Education programme, so where we had a research component in that up to a couple of years ago. So part of his studies was he conducted some research in his school where he completed his school placement, and he was interested in looking at
perspectives
on STEM. And I suppose what the paper he does a really nice job in terms of summarising the theory in relation to STEM policy and practice internationally, with a focus also on the STEM education policy statement here in Ireland. And he interviewed a selection of teachers in his school around their understandings of STEM and their kind of beliefs around integration of STEM practices into their into their teaching going forward. I suppose what he kind of found was that the teachers by and large really valued STEM, but they were really a little bit kind of unsure as to how they could integrate other disciplines into
and you can
their
understand
teaching.
that. You know, you can really understand it, because it's only now when it's, you know, it's a lot of, I mean, that whole STEM, that integrated STEM, even you look through the literature, and it's been going on for 20 years now, coming from America, that there's no one actual definition of what it is and how it can be done, and everyone is working towards that, and I suppose that's a good way. So it should be something that's worked on. But we still haven't got, you know, there's still that separate subject training even within college, you know, initial teachers, and then it's there in the school system, in the system as well. So it's very hard to say to teachers, okay, integrate STEM, and then, you know, how do they, for what purpose, or not only that, how, you know, they need I suppose sport, don't they?
Yeah, and I think ourselves here at the university need to be able to help people with STEM and STEAM education. In fact, I think we need to have more modules of that in, because really, I suppose, as your paper shows, the sciences and the maths kind of kept a dominant position, and they brought in engineering and technology almost as mere applications and real world applications of their materials, whereas we need it to be much more holistic and co-equal. And I personally would say, as Professor of STEM education, I'd like it to be co-equal with not only the sciences and the maths, but the arts and ethics and creativity and everything. We need a different kind of conversation, really.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
And I was even just thinking, coming over here, like my teaching here in UL in technology education is primarily in graphics, in the graphics discipline. But there's huge potential for STEM when you look at graphics, and in particular the application of mathematical concepts and principles through the lens of graphics as a subject. And a lot of people probably don't understand that or value it.
Yes.
And I suppose it goes back to, we exist in our silos. There's silos in secondary school.
And there's silos here in the university too.
Absolutely. And
there is.
That's the neoliberal
so
maybe.
We have a new way. We need a new way of coming out of these cages in a way.
I 100% agree.
And even in that paper, you recognise, and you might want to talk about, is that reward application, because even, you know, because you're saying about in the schools silos, in the initial teacher education silos, but also in the policies coming down, it's silos. You know, as in the exams, you know, there's talking about that integrated STEM, but, you know,
but at the end of the day, there's a job to be done, and there's expectations and pressures.
And there's an exam progression to get on to the next place, or maybe, you know, inside a university, there's a progression pathway that'll value one thing and maybe not the other. It might value still the person who's giving this kind of research rather than the other. We haven't really valued interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research in higher education for, you know, we haven't got there yet. But we are moving towards it.
Absolutely.
There's a very interesting literature, and so lovely to see that paper in there. And I think what was really good with this master's student is he got a great handle as well on the STEM policies that are there. So we have very good, strong policies. I suppose it's about how to match that with kind of our expectations around curriculum and exams and progression. It's like a joined up piece, isn't it?
But I think, like, I'm doing a bit of research with my colleague Antonio Calderon in the PES department here in UL, but we're looking at coherence, a programme coherence. And I think we need to make space. There has to be space for STEM. and to embrace an integrated vision of STEM. It doesn't have to be entirely an integrated vision of STEM, but aspects of it. But in order to create space, I think we have to improve coherence.
We do.
And in order to improve coherence, we probably have to deterritorialize what we do and to look at shared connections to reduce loads that we have. And I think if we can do that, I think it would be a really positive thing, and it probably goes against what the neoliberal system wants us to do in terms of making these non-linear connections. But huge potential there.
And it values sharing, which is very important, and that's very important for even within the word integrated STEM. That's a brilliant. That'll be a great study.
And you say like the neoliberal is going after, let's say, the competitive individual, as we know. So it's kind of underplaying kind of the care, cooperation, and of course that's going to be at the heart of I suppose STEM across the curriculum, because we need people with good scientific and technological knowledge in the world. The world they're going into, we're moving in with artificial intelligence coming closer, and digital competence needed, and the green technologies and all that needed. We're moving into that world rapidly. We're being pushed into it and pulled into it. So we're going to need, we're definitely going to need that new ways of doing schooling and doing education in higher ed as well. Yeah,
and I think I think secondary school education in Ireland, in fairness, is going in the right direction with more of an outcomes-based approach to junior cycle, and more than likely the same at senior cycle, rather than having subjects that are defined by disciplinary content and the flexibility to that's afforded to teachers through an outcomes-based curriculum. So that's really positive.
We could give a shout out to our last 3 podcasts as well, because we had the students and the teachers in from 3 local schools talking about their eco villages and how they were, and how by almost organically their engineering teachers and their physics teachers connected in with the arts teachers. It was a pure boon, wasn't it?
It really was,
because we didn't really see it so much as we put it out there and see what happens, but then you're never sure will that take place. So it was lovely listening to them talking about how much they all valued it. They all have something to say about it. So this is another paper I want to talk about, one you've done with Nicky Blom and Sean O'Connor and Donald Canty, and you're looking at rethinking all about design thinking, which is very interesting, kind of getting away from a strict linear methodological approach, and you say opening a more ontological way of looking at it, and looking at that design rethinking you're calling it.
Yes.
Talk to us about that paper.
Yeah, so I suppose that paper, I was brought into that paper. My own PhD studies was in the area of freehand sketching in technology education and developing competency in being able to sketch and sketch well for different reasons. But in that paper, I suppose what we've acknowledged in the paper is that visual representation is quite a complex concept across different disciplines, and in the technology discipline we could break down visual representations into sketches, drawings and models. And what we've done in the paper is, and it's just scratching the surface, but we've presented a model or a framework that teachers could reference to that breaks down different types of sketches, different types of drawings and models, and the purposes for each, so that students and teachers could almost use it as a reference or a guide to say, I'm going to create a study sketch here, I'm going to create a pictorial sketch or an assembly drawing. And that I think what we have kind of acknowledged in the paper that there isn't a really a depth of understanding there in schools as to the range of different representations that people could make. And I could say the same for science and maths as well. That it's not just a drawing that looks like a photograph, that we can sketch and draw for different purposes, and sometimes the purpose isn't for an examiner who's going to view our portfolio. Sometimes the purpose of a drawing or a sketch is for ourselves to make sense of information and to further iterate on design ideas and models.
That's it. So you've gone broader and deeper is what I can see in the research that you're doing, and you're scratching the surface, but it's very interesting because you've actually talked about maybe a lot of our work at at the moment is kind of overly prescriptive, deterministic. We're actually saying we want students to be innovative and think outside the box, but in reality they come back ticking boxes, don't they? And it's the systems approach as well to kind of standardising stuff and all that. It's kind of an impulse in that direction. And yet, if we're going to understand the world and make a better world of it, and we really are going to need to be able to think innovatively and imaginatively,
and hierarchically, and critically and abstractly, and
make that work in living reality, kind of theory praxis.
Agreed. So that's the work, and there's more to be done in relation to it. I suppose in that paper we were talking about it through a design and technology lens. I've been invited to write a book chapter for a separate project, and I'm currently working through that. But I argue in this book chapter that the development and nurturing of sketching and drawing ability in schools is actually can be the responsibility of teachers across disciplines.
Yes.
And so what I propose is sketching as what we call an assemblage.
Lovely.
And that as part, this assemblage is like non-linear, and it can move and grow and form in different ways, and that it's not prescriptive in terms of that the role of teaching sketching and drawing is just a technology teacher, and if they go into science classroom, that the teacher takes their hands off and say, well, you didn't learn that properly in technology or whatever. So that's what I'm proposing in this paper.
I love it because it's kind of that fluidity. You've got that more of it's kind of like an amoeba floating about. It's got a bit of fluidity, a bit of organic feel to it, and it'll be interesting, I presume, to girls. Will it be interesting more to girls as well? Is there a possibility of that?
Yeah, would it be? Because that's one of the things I was wondering about earlier. We were talking about, wouldn't it be great getting more girls? Or, I suppose starting with the wrong question, is there a higher proportion? Are there more girls going into this and then extending onto Geraldine's question?
Is there a gender issue there with the subject?
Or technology? Most certainly. Yes, and I would be very uncomfortable about it. And I actually had an interesting conversation with PME students during this past academic year, and a couple of the students were under the impression that there was gender equity in the technology subjects based on their experience in school placement.
Yes.
And we drilled into the data, and that was their. It was interesting. That was their interpretation, that there was no issue, and we drilled into the data. And the most recent report we found was from the Central Statistics Office from, I think, 2022, 2023, and we could see that 2 in 10 students taking technology and engineering are females. So that's really
those are the national figures.
National figures.
But I suppose people feel maybe the culture that they feel welcome and that they don't feel, I suppose gender is a difficult issue to talk about in any subject area anyway, and that could be that they didn't feel any was left out, if you like, probably at local level. So it's just I think something that is more fluid and that isn't more, that has that would have an appeal, I think, more for girls, because it could make the subject much more interesting.
Geraldine. Yes.
And particularly innovative and imaginative thinking and all that, I would imagine. But I mean, I'm only just throwing out an idea here.
I 100% agree. So another PhD student I'm co-supervising is looking at the representation of females in technology and engineering, and spatial skills and people's perceptions of spatial skills, and whether that's an influencing factor on students taking technology and engineering subjects. So if you look at the literature would you could take from the literature that females have lower abilities than males when it comes to spatial skills,
intelligence.
But if you start drilling into it, you'll find out that there's debate there at the moment around the design of tests that determine that, and there's gender biases inherent in those tests.
And a lot, exactly.
And there's a lot of cultural stuff anyway behind it, I presume, as well.
Absolutely, but some people might think that spatial skills is left to technology and engineering subjects in secondary school, whereas it's not. Spatial skills are in science, mathematics, geography, it's play in art, so it's everywhere. So I suppose bottom line is, like, one thing, if we talk about sketching skill development or spatial skills development, I think a future of shared visions, sharing around how we develop those and how we talk about those in staff rooms, and almost deterritorializing.
That's marvellous, I think you should. It would be fabulous to see you continuing this work, because that three-dimensional creativity, those are the big problems the world is facing at the moment. Big problems of three-dimensional creativity. And when you said the art, like, it does bring in the arts into it. It's engineering, technology, spatial thinking, the whole lot. It's STEM, but it definitely has the arts there with creativity. I always think of you remember Rosalind Franklin with, the Watson and Crick when they invented that, imagine them discovering, like, the DNA was a three-dimensional helix, and
it was a woman that discovered that.
She brought the chemistry data, but the chemistry alone didn't solve it. They solved it through creative design thinking. And so, I mean, of course, she was left out of the Nobel Prize, but it was chemistry and design. It was creativity, and their design creativity, playing around with the old paper cups that found that. So I think that's really what I see coming across from your research, is that going deeper in there and trying to expand it out. I know in the papers we've been doing ourselves, even on how to be really excellent teachers and good teachers, we are exploring that idea of how, I suppose, you represent and name teaching in the beginning, and how, again, trying to get away from prescription. Yeah,
and I agree, and it would be through my own conversations with you, Geraldine, over the years. I suppose I would have been guilty of falling into the linear kind of thinking about education and being a teacher, and almost embracing the silos. Whereas now I would most certainly see it as a much messier concept
and complexity thinking being needed, and all of that.
No, I don't
Michelle,
have anything.
do you want to add anything there?
Not at all. I just love that sketching, and I think it's a way of, as we mentioned, about that gender. It could support the gender imbalance, because it brings in a different way of developing design thinking. I suppose what I'd be thinking of is developing, knowledge, the different knowledges, and I love the communication aspect of it, which is all part of that evaluation, which is it takes it away from that kind of that what we think of as a computer technological is just the person and this machine. It's it'd be interesting to see down the road and how it affects the gender aspects of it.
We didn't talk much to you, I suppose, about you. You won a Teaching Excellence Award, didn't you, a few years ago? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think all through this podcast, you've been actually sharing your interest in teaching and your love of educating people, and your willingness to keep lifelong learning yourself as a researcher in this area. And I think that's the best thing for a student teacher to know, that we're here puzzling the puzzles as well, and that's the way we want to educate them. So tell us about that award. That was a great award for you.
So I suppose over the years I've been very lucky to be awarded with local awards here in UL. For example, the first 7 weeks teaching award, I think I was awarded 5 or 6 years in a row. And then I was awarded the Regional Excellence in Teaching Award, Shannon Consortium, and was also awarded for the National Teaching Hero Award. I suppose different ways of looking at that. It's great. I think, I would have presented a portfolio for the Regional Teaching Award here in UL, but the other awards, the first 7 weeks and the National Teaching Hero Award, would be based on students' evaluations of my teaching, and it's great to be acknowledged as being a support and a really good teacher.
But you're not acknowledging. I bet you you built up great relations with them.
I did. But I suppose there's different ways I could look at it as well.
Yeah.
If you were cynical, you could have said I was a great businessman.
Yeah.
And I kept the consumers happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you started the podcast anyway, telling us that you didn't even want to be a teacher, and then the way life has turned out, now you're a fabulous teacher, researcher, a great colleague. It's been wonderful talking to you. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Have we missed anything in the podcast?
No. I think that's look, a pleasure to talk to you, and it's great. I suppose it's only when you sit down and you chat about your research and what you do, you realise, the breadth of what you're engaged in, and
what's to come,
and what's to come as well.
Really.
Michelle, do you want to add anything?
No, I just find it, and I think you're very, very humble, because I'd say in the your awards for excellence in teaching, it is all about, which is teaching, is that relationship between the educator and the teacher, the student, and it's so important, because it's there's not a box that you can say this is how you do it, because you're
like, I suppose first and foremost is like I love helping people. I love the challenge of dealing with diversity in my classrooms. I love being able to help people overcome abstract kind of complexity and to be able to break things down. But I suppose just going back to, like, I suppose there's a challenge there for teachers in that, and I might finish kind of on this, that one of my colleagues said to me one day that, he said what one of your teachers said, what one of the students said to me, you need to teach like Diarmaid Lane. And that really resonated with me. And it made me question, even though I've all the teaching awards, it made me question as to, like, there's a fine line in terms of developing good relationships with your students, and sometimes I think you have to kind of create an uncomfortable kind of a gap between yourself and your students, where you challenge students and put them into uncomfortable spots.
I love that.
And I think, to be honest with you, and that's why I came back to, like, that in a neoliberal landscape, there's expectations now from students, but at the same time we need to manage those expectations. Of course, they're coming on, they want to do well, they're paying towards their education, but at the same time we need to develop the graduate attributes. We need to ensure that they become critical thinkers and problem solvers, and in order to do that, you need to sometimes let go of their hands. And I would have said in previous years, I would have been very good at holding people by the hands, helping to explain things for them. But that would have sometimes come out in the wash in assessments. So here's an interesting one where I would have been really good at, I would have got really good student evaluations of teaching, but in the same semesters, I would have had high failure rates in my modules. So try and square that. So students really happy with what I'm doing, but still they're failing the exam at the end of the semester. So that really made me question as to, maybe my approach needs to be a little bit different. Maybe I need to challenge students more, like my colleague may have been doing. So perhaps those students went to my colleague and said, you need to teach like Diarmaid Lane because he helps us all the time. He's always there for us. He explains things for us. Whereas you're putting us into an uncomfortable position here. We don't like that. So that's a real challenge.
Very interesting. It's a very important take on it. I think, But I think
that balance.
So we've been talking with Associate Professor Diarmaid Lane here today on the podcast. I mean, Diarmaid has a great reputation among the students and the staff in the School of Education, a great colleague. But I think the most enlightening part of the conversation today has been that willingness to re-look at what we do, to keep puzzling what we're doing, to keep researching it, to keep trying to be, I suppose, better teachers. But we're in a university, we've academic freedom to think outside the box. We really have to use that space to be able to think anew, to go beyond the curve, I suppose, rather than to be running in behind it, and to make sure we have ethical care of the students that come to the university as well. So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shirley.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
OK, so we'll be played out today by Liam Broderick. Liam is from Abbeyfield in County Limerick, and Liam is going to sing for us a traditional song. It's actually from probably, I don't know, is it the 17th century or somewhere, about Irish-French connections. It's called Shularoon. He's playing the acoustic guitar. He informs me that Shularoons means walk, my love, or come to me, my darling. That sounds like it has romantic tones, but I think given the history of the day, it may have some historical pieces as well that we all better go and get learning. But in the meantime, let's listen to Liam as he sings Shularoon.
I would I were on yonder hill, it's there I'd sit and cry my fill, and every tear would turn a mill. Isca day to my Vorneen's lawn. Shul, shul, shularoon, shulga suckerog, shulga cune, shulga darsog sailigum. Isca day to my Vorneen's lawn. I'll sell my rack, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel, to buy my love a coat of steel. Isca day to my Vorneen's lawn. Shul, shul, shularoon, shulga suckerog, shulga cune, shulga darsog sailigum. Isca day to my Vorneen's lawn. I'll dye my petticoat, I'll dye it red, and round the world I'll beg for bread, until my parents do wish me dead. Isca day to my Vorneen's lawn. Shul, shul, shularoon, shulga suckerog, shulga cune, shulga darsog sailigum. Isca day to my Vorneen's lawn. But now my love, he has gone to France to seek his fortune to advance. If he e'er returns, 'tis but a chance. Isca day